Belief is a vital first step in learning something new. If you don't believe you can, then the areas of your brain required to learn are shut off. To learn anything new, first, somewhere in your mind, you must believe you can. Let's take a simple example. Do you know how to get from your home to your favorite shop? Think about the direction you usually travel to get there. What streets do you take? Now, is it possible for you to travel another way to get from your home and still get to the same shop? Could you learn to travel this new direction to the shop? Of course there is, and of course you could. It's an obvious answer, but if you didn't believe there were any other routes to the shop, your mind would not conceive of the possibility that you could travel a different way, and you'd never take the necessary steps to learn this different way to get to the shop. Take another example. Many years ago, when elephants were trained in circuses, they would train them when they were young. To stop these baby elephants escaping, they would tie a simple chain or rope around the elephant's ankle and peg it into the ground. The baby elephant wasn't strong enough to pull a peg out of the ground. As the elephant grew, it became more than strong enough to pull a peg out of the ground, but because it was conditioned from a young age that it couldn't pull a peg out, it believed it couldn't and never tried. As humans, it is amazing what we are capable of. Unfortunately, for many people, they simply don't believe they can. Thus, never try pulling on the chain to see if it will come out of the ground. In most cases, it will. Maybe not on the first pull, but keep pulling and it will come out of the ground, and you will be surprised at what you can accomplish. If you haven't learned how to remember names and faces, that doesn't mean you can't. All it means is you haven't learned how to yet. And to put it bluntly, if you are doing this course, you must already have some belief that it is possible for you. If you didn't, you wouldn't even bother wasting your time watching these videos. If you believed there was no chance you could remember names and faces, you wouldn't have even looked at the first video. Just the curiosity of looking at this information means that somewhere inside you is a glimmer of belief that you can become good at remembering names and faces. Still not convinced? Well, the fact is, you already have a great memory. Take a moment to think about all the things you already remember. Where did you go to school? Do you remember its name? How did you get there? Do you remember any of the classes you took? Who were your friends that you played with? What about the house you grew up in? What about the things you remember from your childhood? What about some of the toys you played with? Maybe you remember some of the books you read. What about the TV shows you watched? What kind of car did your parents have? What color was it? Did you go on any holidays? Do you remember where? What about some of the highlights from these holidays? Did you meet anyone special? What were some of the things you saw? Chances are there are many things you remember from your past. Now choose one of those memories from way back in your past. What do you remember about that event? Was there one person with you, or were there several? Who were they? Can you remember looks on people's faces? Can you remember any feelings that you felt? Were you inside or outside? What was around you? Ground, floor, ceiling, sky? Was it sunny or rainy? Was everything just one color? Or were there many colors? If so, do you remember any of those colors? If you stop to think about some of the events from your past, you may remember many things about those events you experienced a long time ago. You may not remember everything. That's not the point. The point is, there are many things you do remember. Have a look at a photo taken from an event in your past where you were either in the photo or you were there when the photo was taken. Looking at the photo is what you can see the only thing you remember. Just the pieces shown in the image? You can probably remember many things about what was happening at the time the picture was taken. You may remember a whole bunch of things relating to that picture. Who else was there but not in the photo? Who took the photo? What was happening when the photo was taken? Where the photo was taken? We've just gone through a couple of examples. If you kept track of all these things you remembered from different events in your past, how much information would this add up to? How many memories are stored in your brain? When you think about it, there is a large amount of information stored in your brain. Masses and masses of information stored in that small space inside your head. The most powerful computers of today don't even come close to storing the quantum of information you already have stored inside your skull. And it's unlikely the computers of the near future will get close to matching your brain's storage capacity. Your brain is an amazing, unmatched data storage and processing marvel. We have just gone through some of the things that you consciously can recall, and that is only scratching the surface of the information stored in your brain. For example, have you ever had the experience of not being able to remember something, then you get a prompt, and a whole bunch of memories come flooding back? You might be sitting there daydreaming, and suddenly a whole bunch of memories from your past start filling your mind. Or for some unknown reason, things you hadn't thought about for many years all of a sudden start flowing through your mind. Where did they come from? And why do you remember them now, when for so long you didn't even remember that those thoughts existed? It has been said that your brain has stored everything you experience, see, feel, hear, taste, and smell from the day you were conceived. Is this true? Practically, it's impossible to prove, or for that matter disprove, this claim. However, the fact remains that most, if not all people, have had the experience of remembering something they had long forgotten. On that basis, we're going to move forward under the premise that your mind has stored much more information than you may give it credit. The key to finding this information is understanding the filing system of your mind and using it to your advantage. The key fact is that if you don't believe you can remember more than you currently do, the chances are you won't. The first step to improving your remembering ability is to believe you can. Believing that your brain may have remembered much more than you can immediately consciously recall is part of that first step. This step is yours and yours alone. No one can make you believe you can do it. If you think you can't find it within you to believe that you can improve your memory, pretend. Play the what if game. Ask yourself, if I did believe I could remember more, how would I act? Then do those actions. Sounds simple? It is. And don't try. Make a decision to do it. In the famous words of Yoda, do or do not, there is no try. You either believe you can or believe you can't. Either way, you're correct. So, commit to doing it. The process of learning is simple. We'll get to that later when discussing how you remember. Usually, the hardest thing about learning something new is changing your belief system so that you can accept new information. We get attached to old behaviours that have served us well in the past. Like the elephant, we learn that if we pull on the rope, it just hurts our leg and doesn't come out of the ground. However, just because it was true in the past doesn't mean it is still true now. It's time for that old belief system to grow and become something that can serve you moving forward. Remember, in nature, if it's not growing, it's dying. As we get older, people tend to become a little unrealistic about learning. They adopt the attitude that if they don't get it right straight away, they must not be good at it. This thought process is far from the truth. If you could get it right the first time, you wouldn't be learning something new. You'd know it already. To maintain your confidence when learning something new, remind yourself that when learning, you are in the process of acquisition of knowledge or skills through study, experience, or being taught. Acquisition means the development of a skill, habit, or quality. To develop something takes time. A development is not instantaneous, so it will take time. The good news is that with the right training and a good system, the amount of time can be reduced considerably. And don't worry about what others do. We sometimes judge ourselves too harshly when we compare ourselves to others. Everyone is different and learns differently. You'll learn some things better than others, and other people will learn some things quicker than you. Nobody gets all the green lights, nor do they get all the red ones. We do learn much faster when we feel good about ourselves. So start paying more attention to the things you did right. When things don't go so well, congratulate yourself that you noticed it didn't work so well. You've learned something that didn't work, and now you know not to do that again. Thus, you are a step closer to your goal. In the words of Thomas Edison, "I have not failed. I have found 10,000 ways that don't work." It is important to pay close attention to which thoughts you allow to take precedence in your mind. What you focus on reinforces or breaks your beliefs. The thing is, you get to choose what you focus on. This is very important to believing you can do something new. If you think about all the times you didn't get it right as the reason why you can't do it in the future, that will become your reality. Instead, focus on what this really means. With each step, you are getting so much closer to achieving what you want. In answering the question, how many times should I try? The answer is, until you get what you want. For example, let's imagine you think when you are driving you catch all the red lights, especially when you're in a hurry. Do you actually get all the red lights? No. Test it to see if you do get all the red lights. Have someone count the number of red lights and green lights you get when you are driving, including when you are in a hurry. Keep track of this over a period of time, and then count the number of red lights and green lights you got. You'll find that you didn't get all the red lights. You actually got a lot of green lights. What is really happening is because you think you are getting all the red lights, you notice them more than when you get the green lights. If you notice all the green lights you get, they will then stand out for you, and soon you'll find you're getting lots of green lights. If you want to learn something new quickly, it is very important that you focus on what is getting you closer to what you want. This will reinforce your belief that you can do it. It then becomes a self-fulfilling process whereby you notice more and more things which support you being able to do it, and before you know it, you can. But what about names and faces? It's one thing to remember a bunch of things from your past. Are names and faces that different? No. The principle of memory and recall is the same no matter what the subject matter. We'll talk about how the brain works shortly. Firstly, you already remember many names and faces. What were the names of your parents, grandparents, siblings, children? Yes, they're easy. What about your work colleagues? People you know from social activities or clubs you attend. Do you remember people's names from these settings? Of course you do. And what about your teachers? Most people have at least one special teacher that stands out, whose name they can still remember. What about some of the names of children you went to school with? What about some complete strangers, people you may have never met? Chances are you have remembered their names as well. But what about people you have just met? You were just introduced to someone, and almost immediately after, their name eludes you. What did they say their name was? You can't remember it. It was only seconds ago that they told you, but what was it? Why can't you remember it? And what's even more frustrating is sometimes you are driving home or somewhere else, and that person's name just comes back to you. Why now? You needed it earlier. If the name came back to you later, it had to have been stored in your mind. You just need a way of accessing that information. You need a key to open the vault of your mind. With so much information stored in your brain, you need a clear path to lead you to the right pieces which tell you what their name was. The other part is to make sure you hear the name in the first place. A lot of times, when someone tells us their name, there are so many other things going on, our focus is elsewhere, and we don't give our mind the connections needed to store the name immediately. Thus, we can't recall it straight away. What is needed is a system which we can firstly hear the name clearly, and secondly store the name in our mind so we can easily recall it when needed. That's what this course is about. The first step is to believe you can. Think back to the information we just covered. What do you remember? Do you recall any of those past events we discussed? If you can recall any of those past events we just discussed, then it proves two things. One, you have a great long-term memory. You remembered all of those things from long ago. And two, you have a great short-term memory. You remembered going through all those long-term memories just recently. For those of you being hard on yourself and saying, but there are many things from my past that I can't remember, that's not the point. The point is not about remembering everything. When you walk down the street, you see many faces. There are many faces and names in magazines that you see on a constant basis. Which one of those do you want to remember? They are the ones we're going to focus on. As you practice and get good at these techniques, you'll find that you can remember all the names and faces that you want. You have a system you can put into place when someone introduces themselves to you. You can recall their name immediately after, and the following week, and for the rest of your life. Back to our first step, belief. This one is up to you. Do you have a good memory? Of course you do. You just went through many things you do remember. Again, it's not a matter of memory. Your mind already remembers many things. It's the system of filing and recall that needs work. Distinguishing between memory and your filing system will help give you confidence in believing you have a good memory. Firstly, you already have an awesome memory. Your mind stores much more information than the most powerful computers on the planet. You've just proved that there are many things you do remember. Also, you have proved that there are many things stored in your memory that you may not be able to recall when you want. Again, you have experienced remembering things you hadn't for some time. Memories suddenly popping into your head. This is further evidence that you have a great memory. Now it's your turn. If you haven't already, you need to accept those points as evidence that you have a great memory and feel good about yourself that you do. When you feel good about yourself, your mind is more accepting of new knowledge and new thinking processes. So in short, believe you can.